New details coming into our newsroom tonight following a plane crash that took the lives of Rochester real estate developer Larry Glazer and his wife Jane.
We'll have the latest on the investigation into the crash and the search for the plane in a live report from NBC News right now on Rock City Tonight.
Live from the News 10 NBC studios in downtown Rochester, this is Rock City Tonight with Leah Lando.
We continue to follow breaking news at 7 o'clock right now. The search for the Glazers plane has been suspended until first light tomorrow. Good evening. I'm Scott Kilberry.
And I'm Jennifer Mobilia. Leah has the night off. We can tell you the plane went down north of Jamaica. The Glazers took off from Rochester around 8:45 this morning. We're told officials on the ground lost contact with the plane after 10 a.m. This is a picture of their plane. Then the North American Aerospace Defense Command launched F-15 fighter jets to follow the plane, but broke off after it moved into Cuban airspace. The FAA reported that the windows of the small plane were frosted over and that the plane's pilot was slumped over before the plane went down. New at 7 NBC's Tom Costello joins us live with the latest on the investigation into that crash and the search for the plane. Tom, I understand there's new information coming in from Jamaica.
Well, the Jamaicans say that they have spotted the wreckage, but they don't see any survivors or, for that matter, any victims, and that really is to be expected. The theory here is that this plane suffered some sort of a cabin depressurization incident, and when that happened, hypoxia likely set in. That means that the brain is suddenly deprived of oxygen. The Glazers likely recognized that they had a problem because they asked air traffic controllers to allow them to descend. He wanted to get down to 18,000 feet, and most experts say they should have gone even lower than that. But he never declared an emergency and never told controllers what the problem was. He simply said, we have an indicator light here, a warning light that is a problem. And so the air traffic control never realized that there was necessarily an emergency. What it did was said, drop down to 25,000. He said, I got to go lower than that. They said, you got to hang on. And then that was the last, really, that they ever heard from them. The plane flew at 25,000 feet all the way down the East Coast, eventually out over the ocean. Those M-15s intercepted the plane. Those pilots were actually able to see, apparently, Larry Glazer slumped over the controls of the plane, and then it headed right towards Cuban airspace. As you know, the Cubans back in the late 90s shot down two American private planes that headed into their airspace. So the F-15s peeled off. The Americans discussing with the Cubans, hey, we think we've got a medical incident here and this plane is unresponsive. The Cubans sent up their own MiG fighter jet. They inspected the plane and determined that there was probably a medical incident. They allowed the plane to continue flying straight over their airspace, and we believe it then ran out of fuel and then plunged into the ocean off the coast of Jamaica. Highly unlikely anybody survived.
Well, Tom, the plane departed from Rochester about 8:45 this morning. They lost communication around 10 o'clock, and now you're saying it's in Jamaican waters. So speaking of which, are the Jamaican authorities taking over the investigation, the NTSB or the Coast Guard?
I suspect it's going to be all of the above. You know, the Jamaican Defense Forces now are, and there isn't, you know, much of a very robust Jamaican Defense Force. It's more of a Coast Guard. They're right now trying to determine exactly where is the wreckage, and then they will recover it. The U.S. Coast Guard was responding to the incident. They will probably work with the Jamaicans, and to what extent there is an investigation, the NTSB may be involved as well. The big question is, if they lost cabin pressure, why? How did that happen? It could be an engine event. It could also be, for example, a seal around a window or a door may have been leaking. It could be very difficult and a slow leak. So trying to identify that may be a real problem. And this plane was really a relatively new plane. It was a 2014 model.